Did you know on the Unmute Podcast Network every Friday, Lynn sits down and chats about 3 tech news stories that caught her attention over the last week. If you're interested in a quick recap of stories you may not have heard, check out Friday Finds with Lynn every Friday. Find Unmute in your favorite podcast app and send us an email to feedback@unmute.show with stories you think Lynn should check out. Stay abreast with this week's
news updates.
Hey all, Marty here, and today we're going to be talking about the Braille Doodle. But first, Lynn is with us today, and she's going to be mostly conducting this interview. So Lynn, say hello.
Hello, everybody.
And
this
with
is really
us,
exciting. Very
definitely.
Interesting.
Yep. And we definitely also have a great guest today, and his name is Daniel Lubiner. He's the creator of the Braille Doodle. Say hello, Daniel.
Hello, everyone. Happy to be here.
Yeah, and thanks for being here. We really appreciate it. And Lynn, why don't you take it away?
Hi. Now, Daniel, this piece of equipment is really interesting to me. I'm a Braille user, and I sort of had heard of this, the Braille Doodle, but I didn't really know a whole lot about it. First of all, I'm wondering if you could give us kind of a description of it. Because I'm trying to picture it in my head from the research I did.
Of course.
Okay.
So it's a 2-sided tablet. Okay. It's about the size of a laptop. So if you picture like a large laptop, and on the surface there are hundreds of holes, and inside each hole is a little BB, like a little metal ball. Right, that you pull to the surface with a magnetic stylus. So as you're dragging the magnetic stylus over the surface, the little balls pop up. So you
someone said it's like balls. Someone said it was like a modern day Etch-a-Sketch.
Right. Or we have like, sort of a playful name that we give it, like the Etch-a-Sketch for the blind. Because everybody knows the Etch-a-Sketch, but
that is pretty cool.
But it's and it became just very exciting. The idea of being to draw anything and just be able to feel as you draw, and then when you want to erase something, you just push the balls down and they go right back down.
And there's no power needed for this, right? It's just strictly.
No. Right. It's strictly all mechanical. So everything that's inside of it, it was just designed to have tiny little springs that hold up the balls just right, and that was like, I call it the $60,000 question, because it was how to get those balls to hold up just right. And it cost about $60,000. For us to figure that out. And, it took more than a year to figure it out. Actually, we're still going, but, we're getting it. So we got the hundreds of holes where you have the magnetic stylus. And on one side is for the learning and teaching of Braille, and I really wanted to design something that could be sort of intuitive, like you take it out of the box and start experiencing Braille and start feeling what Braille is right out of the box, like for a child. So it has the entire alphabet, some sight words and stuff, and it has so these are jumbo Braille cells. So each letter has 2 jumbo Braille cells. In one of the jumbo Braille cells, only the A or B or C, only those dots will come up. So you'll feel all the dots, the 6 dots, but only the A will come up. And then the dot with the Braille cell next to it, you have to copy that. So it's like the idea of teaching that, I've been doing for many years is like doing that modeling and doing and repetition, model, do, repetition, So
you're sort of encouraging the student to look at patterns and pay attention to the pattern and then try to replicate the pattern themselves.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the bottom of the Braille Doodle, on the Braille side, are 2 lines of 20 Braille cells. So that is one thing that I saw was like missing in this world, because a lot of times, these things are invented and they don't talk to the teachers. These are not people who sat with students for hours and hours and hours.
Mm-hmm.
These are just people who say, oh, I'm going to make something that's be really good,
Right.
But when you're teaching like reading and writing, you don't just teach the letters, right? You got A, C, K, K. Okay, you got the letters. Or you don't teach 2 letters at a time. You could, but then you have to actually move on to words,
Mm-hmm,
You have to put those letters together. And then from words, you actually have to move on to sentences, right? So the natural progression is that you're teaching C, K, K, at, cat, and then you rhyming the words, right? Cat, fat, sat, mat, and then you're making a sentence. The fat cat sat on a mat. Great. You just are writing something, you're reading something, and it's that kind of success and that kind of like, where you're moving forward and you got the students excited and they could just repeat it and do it over and over again. That's what makes for something that's really good instruction in reading and writing. Now, these are larger Braille cells, so they're jumbo Braille cells, but we're going to have examples of Braille all over the unit. So underneath those 2 lines, there's going to be the full alphabet in standard size Braille, and also the sentence. What is that sentence? The brown fox jumps over the lazy dog.
Lazy dog's back.
Yeah,
or something.
it's that classic sentence where you could find every letter in there, and you could. But it'll help so you really get a sense of what standard Braille feels like with the spacing between words and punctuation.
Because it's like you were saying, it's not enough to just teach people the Braille letters, right? You also have to get them used to having the letters together in a word or a sentence or something like that. So It's different. Yeah, you just, instead of just focusing on letters one at a time, you're putting them together and you're seeing that pattern as a cluster of letters together. That's pretty awesome.
And finding the patterns of words. I like the way you're saying patterns, not only the patterns of the dots, but the way words work. We used to call them like peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, because you have it like an ending and a beginning, and the peanut butter and jelly in the middle, like boat, like OA, and the way B and T are like the bread,
I was just interested to know if this could be used. I know that typically you're talking about using it with kids, but I'm wondering if it could be a tool as well for Braille, adult Braille literacy.
Absolutely. Have you ever... that's just our top secret information. That it's really, our focus has been on children at first, because, people kind of get excited and involved when it comes to children. And, but this is going to be just wonderful for adults, for parents of blind children, because they're going to also have all the print letters are there. So immediately, right out of the box, the parents become teachers. It's going to be great for newly blind adults, as you said, to, for just experimenting in a no pressure way. just feeling what it's like to read Braille. Because I feel like, a lot of times if you're an adult, you might feel like, oh, I can't do this. It's just like, I'm done. I can't do this. I'll just listen to books. And I do have to point out, for your audience and that I'm sighted, so I was a teacher for many, many years. And then I taught kids who are blind and low vision. So I have surrounded myself though with people, like on my team is a person who went blind in his 50s. Another one who went blind as a child, and someone who was born blind. It's just very important to have all those perspectives and be talking about that constantly. And what do you think of this? And what do you think of that? And how do you picture that? How could this be useful in a different way?
Because it seems to me that, one of the things I noticed is that teaching blind adults Braille is kind of quite a challenge. And do we have any research or evidence on what works in teaching Braille? I mean, have we ever really studied this, or is this something we need to study better?
It's definitely something we need to study better. And I really think, I wish Matthew Bullis has now been my chief experience officer, but he, for many years, he's been a teacher of Braille for adults. And he has just taught me so much already about what he's been doing. And it's just very slow going, and it's patience, but, a lot of people could get there, That's something he emphasizes is like, don't think that, that you can't do it, because you can. It's in anybody, and he's also, I like this. He's like, you have to learn Braille, Daniel. And I'm like, of course, I'm trying, I'm getting it together. But he's like, no, you have to learn Braille. You have to learn how to read it with your fingers.
Right.
And that was like a real interesting thought to me, because like, yes, of course, like that makes sense. Like if I'm trying to think about how like a newly blind adult would start off with something like this and get into reading Braille, then I should be able to do it myself.
Yeah, that's a good point. And even I always say, even if blind adults, maybe they can't learn the whole UEB code, but if they could even just learn enough so they could read a label, or learn enough so that they could do some basic things, you know what I mean? So
yeah,
and
find
I know
your
that,
hotel room, find which bathrooms which, or just little simple things. This is the office of this person.
Yeah, it's like being out in public and knowing enough Braille to be able to, go in the elevator, open the door into the correct office you're going into, or any kind of thing like that.
Right. And one of the challenges I know with adult learners is that a lot of folks have diabetes, so they may have lost some of the feeling in their fingertips. Could you explain like these the metal balls that are pushed up by the stylus?
Yeah, the people are excited about that, because with the adults, and I'm glad we're talking about this a lot, because like I was just at the NFB convention, right, down in Houston, and we had a lot of adults coming up, and they're pretty excited about it because they can feel the balls very, very nicely. They're very distinct, so you can really get that idea of the shape of what they're like. And another thing I tried to do, which I'm probably going to try and build upon in the future, is that the cells on top that give you all the samples are actually a little bit larger than the cells on the bottom rows.
Mm-hmm.
So you get that one step of like going from a little bit larger to a little bit smaller. And then, hopefully that'll get you on the step down to regular size Braille.
The size, right. So you're starting out with a larger size so that people can get those patterns in their brain, right? And then you can sort of, shrink it down to a reading, more of a Braille reading. So I'm wondering, how did you come up with the idea of the Braille Doodle?
If I could just finish one thing, though, we haven't talked about like one of the most exciting things, which is like you flip it over and it's just like a whole array of holes.
Oh, that's
dots.
cool.
So you've got
really cool.
584, I think, different dots that
cool
you
thing about
can just
that
take it is just draw circles. You can
that's what I did. Eventually, I was going to ask you that because I'm involved in a craft group. And
wonderful.
It's a blind crafters group. And I was wondering, a lot of us, I think, and it's especially like I was born totally blind. And I think that what would be really awesome, I think what a lot of us really would like to have is the ability to create graphical representations or interpret graphical representations of things rather than just text.
Right.
So that was a question I was going to ask. I might actually have to bring this back to my crafting group because the idea of doodling, the idea of just, sighted people do this. They'll take a pencil and while they're sitting on hold waiting for the doctor to, come online or whatever, they're doodling, right? They're sitting there with
It's kind of funny because I'm doodling right now. I'm making little stars in purple because it helps me relax because I'm always like drawing and like messing around. But you're perfectly right. And that's, it was the joy of teaching art that really, brought this to life. So I was an art teacher for the blind and low vision, and working with these students is just very inspirational, and it really enlightened me in so many different ways on how
it's really cool
we could
that you
experience the wall.
Yeah, like the art background and the education background, when you combine those together, that's just a really cool synergy, that you have both of those perspectives.
Yeah, and it's really just also like being inspired directly and being open-minded to the children and the adults that you're working with, so you're not like trying to come up with these ideas and testing and guessing and testing. It's all about like experiencing it and doing it along the way. And another thing like we could do with the back, it opens up a whole bunch of possibilities. And then, it just became like a snowball effect of what we could do. So you have all of mathematics, graphing, there's nothing out there that could do even simple bar graphs that you can manipulate, right? You have to be handed a bar graph and, well, go ahead.
I know that there are some digital projects now, like I'm sure you've heard of the Monarch, where they're trying to get graphics to be more, but the problem with those is that the Monarch, I haven't heard a price tag on that thing. I know we've seen a price tag on yours. Obviously something like that. Like basically you go to a thing and you listen to it and it sounds great. And then when you hear the price, you're like, okay, I just wasted my time because there is no way I will ever be able to afford that. So I think in with yours, it's like totally analog, right? There's no, you don't have to plug it in. You don't have to.
Yeah, we had a Kickstarter going and we're still in pre-sales where you could get it for under $85. So that's, after it goes out to distributors, like I know AT Guys is going to carry it. They need to also do their markup. So we're looking at retail probably around 150 or so.
Mm-hmm.
But still, for something like this, it's like unheard of. So that's another way I really want to be disruptive. And, it kind of disgusts me that some of these prices, I mean, the way it's like evolved over time, just like how the state has reimbursed certain things, the government reimbursed certain things, so we got to raise the prices. So you end up with a braille cell, a wooden thing with pegs in it for $70.
Mm-hmm.
And
Can you describe the Stylus to me? Is it like, I know what I've used the slate and stylus, but I'm trying to picture what this stylus looks like.
It's more like a pen.
Okay.
It's more like you're gripping a fat pen, and it
Mm-hmm.
has a sort of magnetic rounded end that slides over the surface. You don't have to press down or anything. It just pulls, and it naturally pulls the ball up.
Great. So would you like, I know I don't know if you've ever used a slate and stylus, but
yeah, of course.
Okay. So when you're using the stylus, you do it from underneath of the platform, or
no, it's actually, just the opposite. Instead of pushing down things and feeling them from behind, you're pulling things up.
Up. Oh, okay.
And the things pop up so you could feel them as you go.
That's pretty cool.
One cool thing that I did bring in for my students was the plastic like paper that's on the rubber.
Yeah, the thermoform paper.
Yeah. So it's like on a rubbery surface. Yeah. So you pull that stylus over it, and the lines pop up and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So the students enjoyed that. But so it's something like that, but something that you also can just do repeatedly. Just push it back down. Ooh, I made a mistake. Let's just push that down. And that also, like, one thing one of our saying is, blindness is a spectrum, literacy is a right, because I really also feel like that's also ignored a lot of times, is that so many people are on this spectrum where they have some usable vision. So, and a lot of products are either you're blind or you get a magnifying glass, or electric magnifier. But my students wanted to use all their senses. They want to, like, get their noses down into the paint, get their noses dirty, and they just want to do everything. So using as many senses or as many things as you can to have input is always a beautiful thing. So this would be high contrast silver on dark blue. So those with some vision can still be able to make things out.
And I think what's interesting as well is that, I'm always concerned as a blind adult, for the kids. I mean, we're using a lot of text to speech because it's inexpensive, it's easy, it's available. But I don't know, without teaching these kids Braille, I really don't know how they're going to learn how to spell. I mean, that's my concern. Like, people say
it's horrifying to me.
Yeah.
It's like it goes from it went from concerning to when I first heard about it, and now it's just plain disturbing.
Right.
When you hear about these numbers and why the numbers are the way they are, they're two-sided right now to be learning Braille. They could get by with large print. And I think, Kirk Adams, who's, been an advocate for 30, 40 years, he has a great way to put it. Is like, if you can't read print as quickly as a sighted person, then you need to learn Braille. And Braille is just as important as print is to a sighted person. Where are we surrounded by print? We're surrounded by everything when we're children. And blind children need to be surrounded by the Braille from the moment that they start exploring. It's that important. And what you were saying about not learning to spell, not learning to write in a correct way. I mean, I had many, many students, who graduated high school, mind you, but would have trouble writing a good email.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, we talk about this unemployment rate and how we're going to solve it, and we're going to do this or that. But if a kid is graduating high school now and they're not able to write a good email, like, what type of future do we have for this kid?
Yeah.
I'm also looking at this. Yeah.
AI is going to help them with everything. I could, it's like,
that is going to be helpful, but at the same time, the more we're relying on this technology to take it over, there's a danger to that too, because that's what's been happening to Braille as well, is it's being like, say, okay, well, we have talking books, we have this, we don't necessarily need Braille. Yeah, we do. Yes,
we really do. Yeah,
people need to learn how to read and write.
I have a Mantis right in front of me right now, and I notice when I am reading news stories with it, the types of things that I have learned how to spell. If I were just reading with, text to speech, I would really miss out on a lot. I remember Punxsutawney Phil, like Groundhog Day. I'm like, if I had to spell that without seeing it to save my life, I would have no clue how to spell it. So I think that is, it's something that I think probably educational systems are trying to do things as cheaply as possible, as quickly as possible. And Braille is one of those things that I think it's easy to say it's not important, but we know, and as a teacher, and I know as an adult, a blind adult, that it's very important.
Yeah, it's extremely important. And, I think people are also forgetting about how the brain develops and how we learn things as we're growing up, as, childhood develops. And if you're reading, it's doing different things to your brain and you're learning than if you're just listening to something, if you're just having that audio input. It's just like a whole different thing. So, everybody should have the right to learn Braille. And the fact that only 10% of children in the United States, I mean, it's just ridiculous.
Right.
And I've gone, and we want to go very international with this, because another exciting thing is, because we could put covers on the back, we could put like stencils on it. We could put stencils to teach Braille in any language, right? So I could bring it to India, and I did, but we discussed how we could teach Hindi by just using different covers. And in India, they have this just crazy amount of blind children and blind adults, because they have just such a large population, and it's the healthcare, everything. So there's a lot of reasons beyond that, but they have only less than 1% of children are learning Braille, and less than 1% of adults know Braille. So if I could just get them, like, this is not going to get them fluent in Braille. This is not going to get them to, be reading, writing, but it's going to open up a world to them. To me, it's like as big as like when there was slavery in the United States, the slaves were denied to be able to read or write and learn how to read and write because it would give them power.
Yep, they say knowledge is power, and it's true. And if you don't have the means to acquire that knowledge because you can't fully, read or write, I don't really know how blind kids that don't learn Braille, I don't really know how they develop those literacy skills. I mean, maybe I'm old school, I guess, and maybe it's different today, but anyway, I'm not going to get on my rant because this is your show, not mine. But
no, go ahead.
But I did want to get back to, how you ended up coming up with this, the idea of the Braille Doodle, as well as the the Touchpad Pro. I know was the kind of a laptop type thing.
That's, well, I'll go through that story a little bit. So, I started out as a child. That was a joke. This old joke. Anyway, no, I've always been into the arts and performing. I've always loved that. But after a while, I wanted to have a family, so I decided to become a teacher, special ed teacher. So for actually about how many years? 18 years, I taught special education. So I taught kids of all different ages and all different ability levels. And teaching reading was really, really cool to me, because we really had to take kids who are like non-readers, didn't know their first letters and introduce their first letters and introduce their first words. And even if they had severe learning disabilities or Down syndrome or dyslexia, like how can we, make it so it's accessible for these kids? And the most powerful ways were always multisensory, like bring in a big box of sand or bring in a, clay that they could play with. So that sort of got ingrained into my teaching. And then, I ended up teaching at the New York Institute for Special Education in the Bronx. And at first I was teaching the emotionally disturbed population. And then the art teacher for the blind got promoted. And they said, well, can you teach art to all the kids? And it was actually not really a question. It was like, so now you're going to teach art to all the kids, so you're going to have like, these classes of emotionally disturbed kids. And, plus you're going to have about 100 blind and low vision kids of all different age levels who will come in. And I was scared. I was like, what the heck am I going to do? I've never worked with blind or low vision children or adults ever before. So, but once I got in there and I started working with them, they just, they're like, so quickly I got really comfortable, and they made me understand that they're not blind kids and blind teenagers. They're just kids and teenagers. Right. The teenagers have crushes and want to make out in the hallways, and the children want to play and have fun, and they're not like worried about like being blind all the time. It's like the first thing on their mind. So it was just, again, very just enlightening for me to start learning about these things. So, and then the pandemic hit, right? And then everybody went home. So the pandemic hit, everybody goes home. Well, actually, when I was teaching, let me back up a little bit. So I was teaching there, and I started thinking, like, there's so much missing with these kids. And before I knew about anything like the Monarch or the graffiti, I started thinking, like, what if they had like the perfect iPad for the blind? What if there was nothing, no money in the way? We could use like engineers that like put things on the moon and stuff like that. What if we could do that and just make something that would be awesome for people on the low vision spectrum? It could be full color. It could be, it could have pins that come out of the surface like at hundreds of different levels. Like if you take a photograph of yourself, your face would come out of the surface and you could feel the contours of your nose and your mouth and your chin. So this just became a dream and sort of an obsession of mine that I just started drawing and, trying to work out and researching and seeing how I could do that. And we're getting somewhere. So that remains the dream, to someday do that,
I think a lot of us share that dream.
Yeah.
To get that, we all want to get a more graphical, picture of our environment. And especially those of us who are totally blind, just having a sense of what shapes certain things are, what certain animals are, just
right.
that graphical, that more graphical, three-dimensional, I guess you could say, representation of your environment is really an awesome
and
thing.
I just think, even though they're coming out with things like the Monarch and some of the other, if you just have the 2.5 dimensions, it's not going to be enough, because if you say, okay, there's a face on the surface right now of the Monarch, there's a face here, so can you feel the face? I'm like, well, it's just like a bunch of squiggly lines,
like a blob
of
like a blob.
So,
I know that's kind of how, but I mean, I think if you start young with these kids, maybe they will get a better representation,
and that's another thing with the Braille Doodle that we're hoping, like, it could be a great introduction to what these graphics will be like. But what I was saying about the Touchpad Pro, see, I start going all over the place, but is that if you have like the full contours of things that you can like really touch, like your own face, and then you could understand how the contours like become more like a sculpture, then that, I think, will be much greater understanding of tactile graphics than if it's just 2D, and but we're talking about something that's going to be like $10 million just to, and maybe more in the future. So it's going to take a way to really convince people that this needs to happen, that we could take the money that it would take to build one missile and actually do something wonderful,
something good for the world. Yeah. So I was wondering, what were some of the challenges that you faced in developing these tools, the
Braille Doodle,
Doodle, and what were some of the big challenges that you had to face?
Well, the Braille
besides
Doodle,
money.
Yeah, that was a big one. Yeah. Well, as I was saying, is my long, extensive story that you would have to try and cut down to 25 minutes, or. But is that, when the pandemic hit, I was like, these kids have nothing. They have nothing in their hands. We couldn't teach art. You can't teach like Braille or anything like that. So I had this toy from Amazon. So you could get it on Amazon now. It's called MagTab.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
It's the same type of concept. It's like $20, but it just, when you touch the balls fall right down. So it's made for sighted kids to have fun with something like this, like a drawing toy. And, of course, there was no Braille involved. So, but that was an inspiration to me, but it was also one of the biggest challenges, because people are saying, oh, you invented something that's already invented. I'm like, no. You have to understand, I'm taking something and I'm improving on it, so it will be useful for those. No, it's already out there. In fact, I use it, so that was a big challenge. But the biggest challenge, yes, was getting money, getting people to invest in it, was impossible. So to try to find investors, they're like, well, how am I getting my money back? How am I making more money? So that's when we switched over and I made it into a nonprofit. So we are the Touchpad Pro Foundation. And it became a great thing because now, I'm not interested in, being a billionaire now. I just want to get these out there, and it'd just be wonderful to have this foundation now where we have the ability to take revenues and just put it back into the machine and get these out to kids who can't afford them, or who, have trouble, affording them, or so we could keep this price down low, So now everything's being handled by the foundation. So we did get some generous donors eventually to get through the prototyping phase. And so we got through that, and now we're at manufacturing. But, even at manufacturing, it's going to cost like $100,000 to get over that next hump. So that's when we had the Kickstarter. So now we have pre-sales. We've sold over $37,000 worth of products already. And that's pretty cool without having, the actual products out yet, So I'm just very excited about this. We're definitely moving in the right direction, and we hope to have these out by Christmas. So on doorsteps by Christmas. And
this is going to be exciting.
All right. So so that's the whole story. You get a pretty much good idea of what it's like, and anybody could pre-order it now, and I would like you to, because you're helping the foundation, but you're also getting this at a very low price right now because you're pre-ordering it. So you go to touchpadprofoundation.org. If you Google Braille Doodle, it'll also come up and you'll be able to find it. But touchpadprofoundation.org, and you fill out a little form, and we'll guarantee you that low price. But thank you so much. I know I talk a lot, so.
No, this is great. This is awesome. Really, this is terrific.
No, Daniel, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, we really do appreciate it. This is really interesting, and I can't wait to get my hands on one of these Braille Doodles.
All right, everyone. Well, thanks so much for being here. We appreciate it. And if you're interested, check out the Braille Doodle and all the things Daniel has going on. Lynn, thanks so much for the interview today. And we'll see you guys next time.